Welcome to Surface Knowledge, the only podcast that provides you with useless information for a useful reason. Never again be stuck without an interesting tidbit or fun fact in any social situation. Here's your host, Max Curtin.
Well, howdy, Surface Dwellers. Welcome to episode 9 of our mission to fill your minds with just enough to impress in 30 minutes or less. Now, first of all, I just want to apologize to subscribers that there was no episode last week. My dear wife was unwell, so I was on nurse duty, and I ramped up my baby caring duties. You know, priorities, innit? But if you were following our socials at Surface Knowledge Pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok, nudge nudge, then you would have seen some daily fun facts to top up that lovely surface knowledge brain of yours and to make it up to everyone and to stay on track. Today is Monday when this episode is dropping, and I'll have the next one out by Thursday or Friday so that we stay on track, which means double episode week. Who says I never do anything for you? This week, we're going to be looking at American folklore. Now, when I was planning and writing this episode, I kind of want this to become a mini long-running series that goes with the whole show. At varying points down the road, we're going to look at folklore from other countries and nations. And I decided to start with the US as it's the most accessible, and I think there's so many great stories and messages out there. Now, this is specifically the US. We're not looking at general North America, so no Canada and no South America yet. Now, everyone's favorite part of the show, definitions and context of what the hell I'm on about. Folklore itself refers to the traditional beliefs, stories, myths, and customs of a particular culture. It encompasses a wide range of oral traditions, material culture, and social practices that are passed down through generations. So folklore is not just about old stories, it's a living, evolving part of a culture's identity. Now, this episode is going to be broken into sections that help kind of encapsulate the entirety of the American story as best we can in under 30 minutes. We're going to look at folk heroes, especially those around the frontier and Industrial Revolution era. Then Native American folklore, the real true definition of oral traditional stories. Then we're going to shift over to African American folklore and the stories of resistance and hope during slavery. And finally finishing with the creatures of the night, whose stories have picked up steam over the years of those things that go bump in the night. So with all of that being said, let's dive in and welcome everyone to a surface knowledge of American folklore. Alright, let's start with a hammer, a steel hammer, one gripped by a man who became more than just flesh and bone, a symbol of labor, strength, and human will in the face of industrial progress. This is the story of John Henry, the man who raced a machine and won, but at a cost. According to legend, John Henry was born with a hammer in his hand and the strength of 10 men in his chest. He was a steel driver, someone who hammered drills into rock so that explosives could be packed in to blast out tunnels for railroads. Back in the 1870s, railroad construction was backbreaking and very dangerous work, and for African American laborers, especially those recently freed slaves, it was one of the few jobs that were available. The conditions were brutal, the pay was low, and many workers were little more than disposable tools to the companies that were laying track. But John Henry, he was something else. He was bigger, he was stronger, he was the best steel driver anyone had ever seen. And the legend goes that while working on the Big Bend Tunnel in West Virginia, a new machine arrived on site, a steam-powered drill that promised to do the work of 10 men in half the time. The company men were ready to replace the laborers, and John Henry didn't like that. He challenged the machine to a contest. The rules were simple. John Henry with two 20-pound hammers in hand, the steam drill on the other side. Who could drill deeper into the mountain by day's end? With his fellow workers cheering along, John Henry drove steel like lightning, faster and faster, muscles burning, sweat pouring. The machine hissed and clanged beside him relentless. By the end of the day, when the dust settled and the echoes faded, John Henry had beaten the machine. His tunnel went deeper, his human hands had bested industrial progress. And then, as legend says, he collapsed, his heart gave out, and he died with the hammer still in his hand. Now, like most folk heroes, John Henry probably wasn't just one person. Historians have tried to trace him back to a real man, a black worker in the Reconstruction era South, but no single identity has been confirmed. But what is real is the context. The story emerged from a time of huge upheaval. Railroads were expanding, machines were replacing people, and African American workers were often the first to be pushed aside. And John Henry's story wasn't just about strength, it was about resistance. He represents the dignity of labor, the idea that a person's sweat, effort, and life force shouldn't be erased by progress or profit. Over time, the Ballad of John Henry became one of the most recorded American folk songs ever. Artists from Leadbelly to Johnny Cash, Bruce Springsteen, and even Mos Def have told his tale, each putting their own spin on the myth. A man ain't nothing but a man. That's the line that gets repeated in many versions of the ballad. A man ain't nothing but a man, but before I let your steam drill beat me down, I'll die with a hammer in my hand. This isn't about arrogance, it's about humanity. It's a line that echoes with pride, defiance, and tragedy all at once, and that's why John Henry stuck. He wasn't a king, he wasn't a general or this genius, he was a worker. He was a man who gave everything to prove that humans still matter, even in an age trying to replace them. Well, let's explore some other quick folklore facts of American folk heroes. Obviously, the most famous, I'd say, is Paul Bunyan. He's the lumberjack of American folklore, said to have created landmarks like the Grand Canyon with his axe and dragged rivers into existence. He was often accompanied by Babe the Blue Ox and symbolized frontier strength and endless labor. Pecos Bill was a cowboy so wild he was raised by coyotes, lassoed a tornado, and rode a mountain lion like a horse. His tall tales celebrated the chaos and exaggeration of American West. He was literally bigger than Texas. Annie Oakley, while a real historical figure, took on near mythic status in American folklore. Known as Little Sure Shot, she was a legendary sharpshooter who could split playing cards in midair and often held up as proof that women could outgun the best of men. Many American folk heroes were symbols of frontier life, born out of tall tales told around campfires, railroad camps, and logging sites, places where hardship needed humor and struggle needed legends. John Henry is for sure a cornerstone of American folklore because he reminds us that the biggest legends often come from working class, not the ruling class. And now that I've hammered that point home, let's move on to the next tale where we go even deeper into the roots of American storytelling, the legends passed down by Native American cultures. Long before trains cut across the land and factories chased the sky, the people of the plains lived by the rhythm of the buffalo. This is the story of White Buffalo Calf Woman, a sacred figure in Lakota Sioux tradition. Not just a teacher or prophet, but a divine being. Her story isn't about strength or cunning, it's about balance, spirituality, and the sacred bond between people and nature. Now, the story begins with two Lakota scouts sent out from their starving tribe to find buffalo. They see something strange in the distance, a glowing figure moving towards them surrounded by a white mist. As the figure gets closer, it becomes clear. It's a woman dressed in white buckskin carrying a bundle. One of the scouts has impure thoughts. He steps forward and is instantly engulfed by a cloud. When the mist clears, he is gone. There's just a pile of bones left behind. The other scout is terrified but respectful. He lowers his gaze. The woman tells him to go back to his people and prepare for her arrival. She has something to give them. He runs back, he tells the elders, and soon the whole village gathers on a hill. The woman arrives serene, glowing, powerful. She presents them with the sacred pipe, the chanupa. White Buffalo Calf Woman teaches the Lakota how to use the pipe, how the smoke carries prayer to the spirit world, how it connects earth and sky, man and woman, life, and the ancestors. She gives them 7 sacred ceremonies to maintain harmony with the land and each other. The Sweat Lodge, a purification ritual for cleansing body and spirit. The Naming Ceremony, a celebration to welcome a child and bestow their new identity. The Healing Ceremony, a practice to restore health and balance to the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of a person. The Adoption Ceremony, a formalization of kinship, creating a new family bond. The Marriage Ceremony, a sacred union that joins individuals together, obviously. The Vision Quest, a solitary journey to seek guidance, answers, and deeper connections with the Creator. And the Sundance Ceremony, a powerful prayer for the collective well-being of the Lakota people. And then after this, she promises, There will be 4 ages, and I will look in on you on each age. At the end of the 4 ages, I will return. And when she does, she will bring peace and unity to all nations. As she walks away, she rolls on the ground 4 times, first into a black buffalo, then a red-brown buffalo, then a yellow buffalo, until finally she becomes a white buffalo calf and disappears into the prairie. Now, the meaning of this is that the story isn't just a legend, it's a living tradition. The sacred pipe is still used today in ceremonies, and the prophecy of White Buffalo Calf Woman's return remains powerful, especially among those fighting to preserve indigenous culture and sovereignty. In Lakota culture, the white buffalo is sacred. It represents hope, rebirth, and the fulfillment of prophecy. So when an actual white buffalo is born, and it does happen, although very rarely, it is seen as a spiritual event. The story reminds us of respect for nature, for women, for sacred knowledge. It's about what happens when you listen and what happens when you don't. And unlike many Western myths where power is shown through violence or conquest, this legend centers on wisdom, peace, and unity. Now, the story of White Buffalo Calf Woman has echoed through centuries and has been referenced in native rights movements, environmental activism, and even in pop culture, from native musicians to references in shows like Twin Peaks. So it's not just about the past, it's a story that is still in motion. And now for some more quick folklore facts of the Native American legends. The coyote is often featured in southwestern and plains stories. It is a trickster figure who teaches lessons through mischief, mistakes, and chaos. The first fire is a widespread myth across many tribes, often tells of a hero or animal stealing fire from a greedy being or spirit to gift it to humanity. A Prometheus-like tale about sacrifice for the greater good. In many tribal traditions, stories were oral, not written. They were passed down in winter lodges or by firelight, evolving slightly with each generation to reflect that changing times while preserving the core truths. And many native stories don't follow Western ideas of good guys versus bad guys. Characters might shift roles, teaching that people and spirits are complex and that balance matters more than victory. And that's White Buffalo Calf Woman, not just a tale, but a thread running through centuries of cultural identity. Now, let's dive into African American folklore, shall we? Let's meet a legend who never lifted a sword, but he still fought back. John the Conqueror isn't your typical folk hero. He wasn't like Big Paul Bunyan or fast like Pecos Bill. What made him powerful wasn't his strength, it was his wit, his spirit, and his refusal to be broken. John the Conqueror's roots lie in the brutal reality of slavery, brought to the American South through African spiritual traditions and reshaped through generations of oral storytelling. John became a symbol of hope, resistance, and clever rebellion. The story goes that he was a prince in Africa. He was captured and enslaved, but he was never truly conquered. Even in chains, he kept his laughter. Even when he was beaten, he remained proud. And even when he was forced to work the fields, he always found a way to outsmart his enslavers. Not with violence, but with cunning. He tricked the overseers, he stole back time, and he gave hope to those who had none. In some tales, he shapeshifts. In others, he turns into wind. Sometimes he becomes invisible or leaves behind a copy of himself to fool his captors while he dances free. But most importantly, he always escapes. Now, John isn't just a story. He's a presence. In hoodoo, which is a traditional African American spiritual practice, there's a root named after him, John the Conqueror root. It comes from the Ipomea jalapa plant, a relative of the morning glory, and is considered one of the most powerful roots in hoodoo. People carry it in mojo bags or wear it as a charm for luck, strength, protection, and personal power. The idea is simple. Just like John, you may be pushed down, but you are never defeated. It became especially powerful during slavery and the Jim Crow era when outward resistance could get you killed, but John reminded people that there are other ways to win. The Harlem Renaissance writer Zora Neale Hurston played a major role in preserving John's legend. In a 1943 essay, she described him as a laughing spirit who brought joy even in the worst of times. He told people not to grieve, that he would come back. He walked like he had somewhere to go and laughed like it didn't hurt. To Hurston, High John was more than a tale. He was a living embodiment of hope. He was that feeling deep down in your chest that says, you haven't beaten me yet. Now, High John belongs to a long tradition of trickster figures in African and African American folklore. Tricksters don't win by brute force. They bend the rules, they play dumb, they speak truth to power through humor and cleverness. And for people living under systems designed to control them, a trickster is a survival guide, a reminder that intelligence, humor, and spirit are weapons as well. In many ways, High John is the American descent of Isu, the West African trickster deity. And like Isu, his power lies in movement, change, and challenging authority without directly confronting it. Today, High John the Conqueror still shows up in literature, music, and even spiritual practice. He's invoked in blues lyrics, referenced in comic books, and still found on the shelves of folk magic shops across the South. He represents a version of power that doesn't get enough credit. The power to endure, to laugh, to outlast your oppressor without ever surrendering your identity. Now, time for some more quick African-American legends. We have Uncle Monday, who is a lesser-known but powerful figure in the Gula folklore, was said to be a formerly enslaved African who escaped the Florida swamps. He made a pact with a river spirit and returned as a magical conjure man, part human, part alligator. When we have Brer Rabbit, who was made famous by the Uncle Remus stories and later songs of the South, and is a classic trickster, based on African tales of clever animals like the Anansi, the spider. Brer Rabbit always found a way to win by outwitting stronger foes. And many African American folktales blend West African spiritual roots with Christian symbolism, Native American influence, and the harsh realities of slavery, creating a uniquely American, deeply resilient folklore. Conjure or hoodoo traditions aren't the same as voodoo. Hoodoo is a folk magic system rooted in African traditions, blended with European herbalism and Native American plant knowledge, often used for healing, protection, or rebellion. And folklore in enslaved communities was often passed secretly through whispered stories, lullabies, and coded songs as a way to preserve culture, teach resistance, and survive psychologically. So High John the Conqueror wasn't just a character, he was and still is a lifeline. He's a wink, he's a smile, he's a promise whispered between the lines that they may have your body, but they'll never have your spirit. And now for our final tale, we're going to head into the woods and into the shadows a little bit, with a creature that may not offer hope or wisdom, but will absolutely make you think twice about taking a midnight hike through the Pine Barrens. Now, the Pine Barrens of southern New Jersey is a place that's remote, dark, and quiet enough to let a good monster legend thrive. This is the story of the Jersey Devil, a winged beast that's been haunting American imaginations for over 250 years. Now, the most famous origin story begins in the early 1700s with a woman named Mother Leeds. She was poor, overburdened, and lived in a swampy, isolated part of New Jersey. She already had 12 children, and when she found out she was pregnant with her 13th, legend says she cursed the child in frustration by saying, "Let this one be the devil." And apparently someone or something was listening, because when the baby was born, it looked normal at first, but within minutes, it transformed. Its body stretched, it sprouted wings, it grew cloven hooves and a long forked tail. It let out a screech, killed the midwife, and flew up the chimney. Since then, the creature has been spotted for centuries, flapping through the trees, stealing livestock, or lurking just beyond the firelight. But what is it exactly? And descriptions vary here, but the most agreed on basics are it has a goat or horse-like head, it has bat wings, it has hooved feet, forked tail, sometimes claw, sometimes fur, but without a doubt, pretty unsettling if you think about it. Now, it's said to emit a blood-curdling scream like a baby crying mixed with a banshee wail. And according to lore, it can move at an unnatural speed, vanish into thin air, and leave behind strange hoofprints in the snow. It's part cryptid, it's part demon, it's part bad dream, and it is entirely Jersey. And here's where it gets interesting. Historians believe the legend may have started not as a monster tale, but as political slander. The Leeds family were real people. They were landowners, they were publishers, and they were supporters of the British Crown. Now, in the years before the American Revolution, they were deeply unpopular with the rebellious colonists. Daniel Leeds, who was the family patriarch, published an almanac that included astrology and mystical symbols, which led his Quaker neighbors to label him as blasphemous. His son, Titan Leeds, sick name, kept publishing under a family crest that featured a bat-winged dragon. Sounding familiar? Even Benjamin Franklin got in on the action. In a fake obituary, he mocked Titan Leeds as a ghost who haunted readers from beyond the grave. And some historians argue that this public ridicule snowballed into the myth that is the Leeds Devil, which later morphed into the Jersey Devil. So, depending on your take, the Jersey Devil started either as a colonial-era smear campaign or a literal hell baby who launched herself out of a chimney. Either way, pretty spooky. Now, sightings of the Jersey Devil aren't just old wives' tales. In 1909, things got pretty intense. Over one frenzied week in January, hundreds of people across New Jersey and even parts of Pennsylvania claimed to see the devil. Schools closed, factories shut down, police officers fired their guns into the sky, and the Philadelphia Zoo offered a $10,000 reward for its capture. No one caught it, but the panic was real. And then since then, sightings have continued, from truckers on back roads to campers in the pines. Most modern skeptics blame owls, sandhill cranes, or just misidentified animals. But for the believers, that only makes the devil better. Hiding in plain sight, just clever enough to keep one step ahead. Today, the Jersey Devil is everywhere. It is the namesake of the New Jersey's NHL team, the New Jersey Devils. It features in video games, comics, ghost hunting TV shows, and spooky travel blogs. And it's even got its own beer and tourist merch. And in a way, it's kind of become a state mascot, a spooky but beloved part of Jersey identity, kind of like Bigfoot, but with a bit more edge. There's obviously other American creatures that have been passed through folklore. We've got the Mothman, a winged humanoid that was said to appear before disasters, became famous in 1966 after sightings near Point Pleasant, West Virginia, just before a deadly bridge collapse. The Bell Witch from the early 1800s Tennessee was a poltergeist said to torment the Bell family. Even President Andrew Jackson reportedly visited to see for himself and left spooked. The Wendigo is a skeletal, cannibalistic creature associated with greed and winter. It's said to have once been human, transformed by hunger and darkness. The Chupacabra is a more modern cryptid from the 1990s, and it was first reported in Puerto Rico, and it's blamed for draining livestock of blood and has since become a staple of Latinx folklore across the Americas. Cryptids often serve as metaphors representing fears of the unknown, anxiety about the wild, or warnings to stay out of a place that you just don't belong, and they tend to stick around because they're never fully proven or disproven. So the Jersey Devil might not be teaching spiritual lessons or outsmarting the boss man, but it is part of the cultural DNA. The kind of story that's whispered around campfires and kept alive by beliefs, fear, and just enough possibility to keep us looking over our shoulders. So from hammers to pipe ceremonies, tricksters to hoof demons, this has been your surface knowledge of American folklore. A beautifully wild and meaningful ride through the myths, symbols, and stories that have shaped the soul of a nation. And here's the thing that I want to talk about. Folklore isn't just about entertainment. It's not just spooky stories or exaggerated legends. It's how people remember. It's how they pass down history when they're left out of the textbooks. It's how they teach morality without a pulpit. It's how they keep culture alive when the world around them keeps trying to silence it. In the United States, which is a country built on movement, conflict, and contradiction, oral traditions have been essential. For Native peoples, folklore preserved sacred knowledge and spiritual laws long before written language. For enslaved African Americans, folklore was resistance in disguise, a way to teach survival and dignity when the system offered none. For working-class Americans, tall tales and folk heroes turned hard lives into epic narratives, stories where the little guy could win, even if only in legend. Folklore is democratic. It belongs to everyone. It is passed down in kitchens, campsites, barbershops, and late-night front porch conversations. It evolves with the times, bending and reshaping to fit the needs of each new generation. And the best part of all of that is that every story means something. John Henry isn't just a guy with a hammer. He is a reminder that your work, your struggle matters. White Buffalo Calf Woman isn't just a myth. She is a guide to spiritual balance and harmony. Hi John doesn't just make you laugh, he reminds you never let them steal your spirit. And the Jersey Devil, well, maybe he just reminds you to keep your wits about you when you're in the woods. So whether the stories are sacred, whether they're symbolic, or just plain strange, they endure because they speak to something true. They speak about us, about the world, and about how we want to be remembered. So I say, here's to the storytellers, the elders, the tricksters, the firekeepers, and folklore preservers. Here's to you for keeping that curiosity alive, because the moment we stop sharing these stories, they disappear, and with them, part of who we are. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Surface Knowledge. If you enjoyed the journey, then please leave a 5-star review and share it with someone who loves a good story. Follow us at Surface Knowledge Pod for more daily facts and weird wonders. And if you've got a folk tale from your part of the world, please drop me a line, because this is far from the end of the story. Join me, not next week, but later on this week, remember what I said at the start, for a surface knowledge of the science of dreams.
You've been listening to the Surface Knowledge Podcast, part of the GT5 network. Be sure to subscribe and rate on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. We'll see you back here soon for another episode. Until next time, stay curious.